Hey everyone, Nick here from Whole Latte Love. I've got John with me.
Hello everybody.
And welcome to part 5 of today's Black Friday Cyber Monday live stream event. So today, or this segment in particular, is going to be on some of our favorite prosumer espresso machines from Bezzera. So behind us, in no particular order, we have the Bezzera Aria, the new Whole Latte Love exclusive Bezzera Sole, and the Bezzera Matrix MN, sporting a pinkish purple panel configuration of my choosing. But I will show you how, if that's unsightly for you, you can change that at home. So to tell you a little bit about Bezzera, if you're not familiar with the brand, we've carried Bezzera machines for a good amount of time now, but they have a well-established history in the world of coffee. They hold the patent for the original espresso machine. So you may see Bezzera, and it'll say dial 1901. That's referring to the date that they filed the patent for the original espresso machine that was invented by Luigi Bezzera. So he was involved in creating the first ever espresso machine, and it's his family's company that has been in existence for over a century at this point, producing espresso machines. So they're on to their 4th generation. Yep. It's wild, isn't it? So there's Luca Bezzera and his father Guido, who are currently at the helm of the company. And so they've maintained their sort of really strong Italian identity. I think, you know, it's very, in a broader sense, it's easy to say that espresso is an Italian beverage and there's a lot of Italian history to it, but Bezzera, in their design on their machines as well, really lean into that, and we'll see that with some of the design elements that we have on these machines today. So again, if you have any questions about those, we'll get into it, but just some things to note about all these machines that we have here today. All have E61 groups, all can have flow control, so I know we don't have flow control on our Sole, just so we can break things up a little bit visually for you, but they all can be equipped with flow control. All 3 of these machines have rotary pumps and can be plumbed, and they all use PID regulation. Now, the Aria and the Sole, those are heat exchanger espresso machines. The Bezzera Matrix that we have up here, that's a dual boiler espresso machine. So let's start just with our Aria, which we have here on the left, and we'll talk a little bit about heat exchanger espresso machines in general. So a heat exchanger espresso machine has the ability to brew and steam at the same time. It has one very large boiler that's full of steam and hot water, and then there's a tube that runs through the center of that boiler, and that's being heated by that surrounding steam, that surrounding hot water, and it connects up to your brew group. So what does that mean? Well, that means that you can brew and steam simultaneously. Heat exchanger machines are, in some cases, what I like to refer to as sort of lifestyle machines, to the extent that in some cases you can't always get as precise a brew temperature on a heat exchanger machine as you would, let's say, on a dual boiler or a single boiler machine. But if you are really somebody who enjoys milk drinks, these would be a perfect option.
Yep. Yeah, these are the machines for you if you really enjoy milk drinks. Sometimes, you know, if you're doing a latte or if you like a little sugar, vanilla, something like that in there, then maybe you're like, you know, maybe I don't need an exact precise temperature because I'm going to be adding some other things to it anyway. This is absolutely a machine for you. And not just that, great for the budget as well. Dual boiler machines will be precise but can carry a bit of a higher price tag. So if you like those kind of drinks, lattes, you know, vanilla type of things, this machine is going to knock it out of the park for you, and that's not to say that you can't get good espresso out of it as well.
So if we go over the anatomy of our Aria that we have right here, we've got our hot water wand here on the right, we have our steam wand on the left. Bezzera does tend to prefer these joystick style wands, so that means we can simply press and dispense hot water or steam. Flow control device is located at the top. Bezzera's flow control is actually pretty different in terms of the design when you compare it to, say, an ECM or a Profitec, where you have a larger arm that actually extends outward, and that's to give it full clearance to pass over the top of the cup tray here. And so the interesting thing of note is that the flow control, the steam and hot water, and the E61 lever are actually all the same piece, meaning that we do offer the ability to customize using different accents that we have. This is the stock rosewood that comes with this machine, but we could hook you up with other accents as well. Now, I mentioned the Italian identity, and if you can zoom in even more, you'll see that on the flow control device, there are the 3 colors of the Italian flag. You have green, white, and red with the Bezzera logo. Again, you do see, if you have really good vision, that dial 1901 underneath the Biscione Serpent logo there. Now, that same coloring, you can sort of see it peeking around the corner here on the side, but on the steam and hot water gauge, thank you, Will, you'll see that we also have the Italian flag again. This is what's referred to on the Aria as a dual manometer. So that means that this is a consolidated pressure gauge that's showing us both brewing pressure and steaming pressure. So on the top half of the gauge, you see that needle is pointing towards the current steam pressure inside the boiler. On the bottom half of the gauge, that's going to be our brew pressure. That's not going to move, obviously, until we start brewing. The Aria that we carry, there are several versions that are on the market. All of the ones that are sold at Whole Latte Love have PID controllers. They all have plumbable rotary pumps, and they all have pre-installed the Bezzera flow control. So if you are wondering what you're going to get from us, because I know there's a couple of versions of the Aria that are out there, ours, like I said, are all plumbable rotary with a PID and with flow control. There are versions of this machine that do not have PIDs. There are versions of the machine that do not have rotary pumps. So we wanted to go with something that could be plumbed in. Now, Bezzera uses a sort of universal style of housing on many of their more entry-level, let's say, prosumer machines. So really the idea behind the Aria was to create a machine that is very compact with a rotary pump. So on this particular model, Bezzera has done just that. I believe that the Aria, and I'm going to see if my tape measure is right here in front of me. No, it is not. But this machine is roughly, I think, about only 10 or so inches wide.
That's it. Yeah, this is a very compact machine. I also want to point out how very cool, I love these. I want to point out these really cool decals on the side.
Yes. So there are 4 housing colors that we have for the Aria. Right now it's available in stainless, black, red, and white. And depending on which version you do choose, you may see that there are some options that have the cutouts, some that don't. Right now the ones that do have cutout panels are red. The polished steel has black plastic inserts. The black has rosewood inserts that match with that as well. We have a question from Russell. Can you guys please compare the E61 group head with other types of group heads? What are the differences and trade-offs? So, Russell, that's a great question. So first of all these machines do have E61 group heads, but Bezzera is a company that actually does manufacture other styles of groups as well. So if we want, I could maybe go grab those real quick. And John, if you want to just offer up just a general explanation on the E61, and I'll come back with some tools to
sure. Yeah,
do
the
a little bit of
E61
education
group
there.
is the group that will be separated from the body of the machine, just like this. Now, these do take a little while to heat up, but they stay very stable because they get very hot. That's one of the benefits of the E61 group. Now, the other styles of group head, you've got the ring group, and that's where it's literally just kind of a sort of a ring that you would plug or screw the portafilter right into. Now, the other kind of brew group that typically goes up against, that the E61 group goes up against, would be the saturated brew group, and that's where the brew group is sort of a part of the boiler. So some people say a little bit better temperature stability with that kind of a brew group, but they're very, very, very expensive. So that's what part of the popularity of the E61 group. Still a lot of temperature stability. It gets very hot and stays hot without putting the machine into the stratosphere of price. So those are kind of some of the differences between the brew groups there. I like the E61 groups because you can add the flow control onto it, which is right here. In fact, I might even be able to show you a little bit of what this flow control device can do for you. Let's close it all the way, and I'm going to open up the brew lever right here. So this is all the way closed. I've got nothing coming out. I'm going to open it about a quarter. We'll bring it about actually our quarter right here. This is a really light stream of water. And right about here is going to be the stock flow rate. That would be the flow rate as if the flow control was not installed, to get to about 9 bars of pressure. So a lot of times you hear about pre-infusion, things like that. When it comes to espresso, you can pre-infuse very easily if you've got flow control installed. In fact, it gives you a variable measure of how you want to pre-infuse or even post-infuse, which is where you would have 9 bars of pressure or so during your actual extraction. Then towards the end of the shot, maybe you want to decrease the flow of water to cut back on some of the acidity or bitterness. And there's just kind of no shortage of ways to brew your coffee with this flow control installed. That's one of my favorite things about the E61 group. Nick, what do we have here?
We have a Bezzera BZ10. So just to point out, same wrap housing and frame as our Aria. But let's get up close because this is a BZ group espresso machine. So John obviously mentioning the flow control that you can put on an E61 group. So E61s, they've been around since 1961. It's a sort of ubiquitous design that exists across most espresso machines that you see in that prosumer range. So the BZ group is similar in appearance on a machine like the BZ10, going to be different on something like the BZ13, for example. Now, coming out of the front of the machine, you have a channel for your water to flow through. So water, there's a tube in here, runs down. I don't know if we can see from the top. Maybe, Will, you can get the other camera, but you're good where you are now. But there's a plate up here, and then a much larger chrome-plated brass ring on the bottom. So overhead, there are 3 hex screws that hold this bottom in place. And there are heating elements in the back of this, so we'll just call it the neck, more or less. And so those heating elements are actually heating up this group actively, okay? So when you're talking about the differences and the trade-offs on this machine, the BZ10, on something like the Bezzera Matrix or Duo MN, the advantage is that an E61 group is going to use the water in the boiler to heat the group. So it's going to circulate hot water up to the group. That's going to keep that metal hot, right? It can take longer to do that. On the BZ group machines, that water is just staying in the boiler. It's not circulating through the thermosiphon. So this design, unfortunately, there's nowhere on here that you could mount a flow control. So you are losing that level of additional control, let's say, but you are getting a machine that heats up much more quickly. Now, one thing that I would add though, and this kind of ties back into the segment on the Gaggia Classic, is the fact that the E61 is such a common design that there's more accessories and upgrades available for the E61 than there are for other styles of groups. So we carry upgrades for the BZ group. We have a couple of different shower screens that you can use. You can use the same portafilter baskets, can't use the same portafilters though either. There's a different orientation of the tabs on a BZ portafilter that are designed to fit into this group. So you do need to make sure that you're buying, and thank you, Will, for that. You can see the orientation on the tabs there is different. So you need to make sure that you're buying specific accessories rather than some that may be a little more universal. So I'd say the BZ style of group is really good if you are looking for fast coffee. And it's a sort of hybrid design that you see now on ECM's Synchronica 2, where you are using the thermosiphon of the E61 to maintain group temperature, but during initial heating, you're using a cartridge heater that's very similar to what you'd find in a BZ style group.
Now that's like an electronic heating element
right.
inside of the group to get it up to
That's an
up to
electric
temp
heating
much
element
faster.
inside the group. And so you're using electricity and a heating element to heat the metal rather than letting that hot water do it for you.
Right. Yep.
That's right.
So we talk about parts availability. Parts are always, it's so ubiquitous, the E61 group, so parts are always easy to find. That's another advantage of the E61 group.
I would say, though, it's also a little more complicated because there are many parts and pieces. I don't know if you've ever stripped down or rebuilt a E61, but there are a lot of pieces involved. Bear in mind, if you maintain your machine well, you will not necessarily have to replace those parts all too often. But on the BZ groups, you literally have a giant chunk of metal here. The whole thing comes off, and then it's just a tube that runs through this and some heating elements. There's a solenoid valve inside the machine behind the front panel, and there is a duct that will dispense water down into the drip tray on these machines too, so you're not losing out in that way. So I would say from a maintenance standpoint that you do have a little bit of an easier time with that BZ group. Just my thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, good thoughts. I hadn't considered some of that. I appreciate that. Yeah, and good question, Russell, as well.
Yeah, but couldn't help myself. Had to go grab a machine, obviously. But yeah, you can see obviously a lot of the same design DNA in a machine like the Bezzera BZ10. Obviously, you've got the joysticks for the steam and hot water, and you've got a much more compact housing design here. So Aria versus BZ10, obviously you do have the E61, so you've got the flow control device, and there's a rotary pump inside that Aria. So you can have an unlimited supply of water. You can also have filtration options that will treat the water before they get to the boiler, something John and I talked about earlier in our first segment on water filtration this morning.
Like the BWT Best Max Premium filter kit, right?
That's correct, exactly.
Nice. Yeah, now the BZ10 is a vibratory pump machine, right? You can't plumb this one in.
That's correct, you cannot.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, all of the machines behind us, these all have rotary pumps, which means one, they tend to be a little bit quieter of a pump, and two, you can plumb them in. Now, if you were gonna do that, like Nick said, you would have to make sure that you're getting your water treated before it gets to the machine in order to protect your boiler. And not just that, but make tastier coffee as well.
That's right.
Yeah, a lot of the filtration products we have will clean up the calcium and add magnesium. So you've got a safe boiler and tasty coffee.
Yeah. So the Sole and the Aria are going to be fairly similar machines just in terms of their overall use experience. Now, like I said, this Sole doesn't have a flow control on it, but we do have flow control available for the Sole, so you can add that. Major differences between these two machines are primarily going to be capacity. So the Sole has a larger water reservoir, first of all, and it also has a larger boiler. Other than that, though, they're both PID controlled heat exchangers. Now, well, if we can get close to the PID on the Sole here, I'll explain. Bezzera does something a little different from other companies where they show you the predicted brew temperature. So in this case, it's 200 degrees. Obviously, the boiler is going to be much hotter than 200 degrees. So that is the anticipated temperature for brewing your coffee. The boiler temperature itself, though, is actually much hotter. And these are very standard PIDs where you have just the ability to change that temperature, or you have the ability to change the unit of measurement between Celsius and Fahrenheit. And otherwise, the PID doubles as a shot timer, but that's it.
And now, Nick, on most of these PIDs with Bezzera, you would just hit the minus button, and that's how you enter the programming mode,
That's right. And so what I just demoed is exactly the same on the Bezzera Aria as well. So
awesome.
Just in general, though, Bezzera is a big fan of copper. I know we have an interview that we did with Luca Bezzera when we visited their factory in Milan, and he spoke about how, just as a company in general, Bezzera's preference for boiler materials is copper. So versus stainless steel, stainless generally tends to have a little bit more ruggedness to the design, and it can be a bit better at resisting certain types of corrosion. It's a harder metal to work in some cases too. Bezzera prefers copper due to its thermal properties, and I find, generally speaking, that on heat exchanger machines from Bezzera in particular, that they tend to have better steaming performance than their contemporaries from other brands.
Now, I was interested in that. Should we check it out, see what the steam flow looks like?
I think we certainly should. So either on the Sole or on the Aria if you want.
Yeah, let's check them both out here.
So if you want, we can just do a whole brew and steam on this. So these are some oak accents from Wiedemann that we have. And we've got the Eureka Atom W65. So if you're not familiar with that grinder, amazing grinder from Eureka. It's got the ability to simply automatically tear out the portafilter.
Nick,
they want the funnel.
Nick, where's your scale?
I don't need a scale, John, because what I can actually do is tear out this portafilter.
Right in there. All right.
There we go.
Now you've got that set to 18 grams, so I would expect it's going to be 18 grams within reason there.
And you know, I know that not Zach Schaus, but we have two Zachs here whole out there. We had Zach Root helping us with set decoration as well. He said that this was calibrated for us. I wasn't sure about this dosing ring, but really, and we demoed this on one of our segments before, when you create enough stability between the portafilter and the dosing ring, it will tear out and it will grind automatically. No scale, obviously, because this is a grind by weight grinder. Programmed for 18 grams, you're going to get 18 grams out.
Nice.
Nice and fluffy, 65 millimeter burrs there. And there's some Eureka accessories here. See, I would have gone with oak and oak so that my portafilter would have matched my leveler here. So maybe one demerit for Zach, but otherwise he did pretty good here.
Not too bad, and that's a nice looking tamp here too.
Nice looking tamp.
Now, on these machines, do you think you need a cooling flush since it is a heat exchanger?
So, you know, John, that's a really good question, and we can check that right now.
Sure.
So a cooling flush, for those of you who aren't familiar, is a flush of the group, and you can go right back there, Will. If the machine is idled for a long time, water inside the heat exchange tube can heat a little bit beyond where you would want it. And you can often tell because you're going to see cloudiness, bubbling. It's called flash boiling. Cooling flush is simply going to flush out that water, replenish what's in the boiler with fresh water from the reservoir. And we do have a little bit of boiling on that.
Yes.
You see the bubbling right in there.
You can certainly see some steam.
Let's do a quick pull.
Oh, there we go.
And then you get that nice stream and you're looking good. So that's a cooling flush. Really, it takes all of about 15 seconds, and now we're ready to start
even less,
extracting. So let's, this cup's a little small. Let's get one of those bigger cups.
Sure.
And I'm gonna grab a little bit of milk because we're gonna demo what's so great about heat exchanger espresso machines, right? And so that's the ability to brew and steam at the same time. So fill up a little bit of milk here. I know you just poured some latte art in our previous segment. And so more or less what we're gonna do is get our steam wand ready, tear out our scale here, and just move that forward. This is our Varia AccuMini.
AccuMini. One of my favorite products.
There we go.
Now, Nick,
really quiet pump like you were saying there.
Yeah. Now we don't have the flow control installed here, but if you do plumb the machine in, which you can do because it's a rotary pump machine, these E61 groups, you will feel one notch on the brew lever just before you get to the top. It's kind of that halfway point. That sort of gives you line pressure, very little bit of pressure, and that can sort of pre-infuse for you.
So 25 seconds, so that looks perfect. So Zach did a great job dialing that in. And my milk finished a little before that. So we're right in the center here, looking good. And then we're just gonna, see, I may have needed a little bit more milk there.
That's all right. We can still get some nice stuff in here.
And a little too thick on that. So John, I feel like if this is our throwdown, you have a chance to walk away with the gold there. You indicate that the Sole temperature is predicted for the brew group. Is that also true for the temperature setting on the Aria? Yes, so Edward, that's gonna be the same case. So basically on like the Bezzera BZ13, the Aria, the Sole, if it were exactly 200, we would not have seen that flash boiling, but we're close, right? Mm-hmm. The only heat exchanger that we have that's going to give us the actual true temperature that you would expect from dispensing is going to be the ECM Mechanica Max, because that has a probe inside the thermosiphon, meaning it's actually measuring the temperature of water that's circulating up to that group.
Yeah, good question.
So we've got, John, do you recommend disconnecting the boiler autofill when descaling so that the boiler fills up completely? So John, I would recommend actually just using some filtered water, because when you're starting to disconnect components, like boiler autofill is really important, obviously, for making sure that the boiler is always replenished so that you don't run dry. And I would be careful when making any kind of changes that you make sure everything's plugged back in to ensure that it's all been done properly.
Yeah. Descaling a heat exchanger machine or a dual boiler machine can be risky and difficult. That's why our official recommendation is usually just start with the water, and you should be good and never really have to descale. Yeah. So if you're using some of the BWT products that we profiled in our first segment today, then you should be safe and in good shape, and not run into those kinds of issues down the road. Because those can cause any kind of scale issues, can cause other issues as well. So we'll just start with good water that doesn't have any elements that'll cause scale, like calcium and things like that. Plus, all those products will infuse some magnesium in there, which pairs well with coffee. Tastes great. So
I just couldn't bring myself to knock out in the nice Bezzera knock drawer that we have here.
Can we check out that knock drawer? I think these things are so cool.
Let's check out the knock drawer, but I think, John, I would say because the Aria and the Sole are fairly similar, I would go ahead, maybe pull us a shot, froth some milk on that, and then we'll move on to our Duo, actually.
Awesome. Sounds good.
We'll complete our throwdown that we have going on here. So we have my kind of, misshapen Rosetta.
Misshapen Rosetta.
I mean, the truth of the matter is, too, though, in just a few seconds, we really got good roll, and we were able to start to get that air incorporated and that heating. I just took a little too long. That was all done before my shot was even close to being finished. And so that's something that you just want to get used to when you're starting to brew and steam at the same time. Is, I would say, generally speaking, if you're going to be messing with flow control, probably want to make your flow adjustments first, especially if you're going to end, let's say, at a fixed flow rate and then start steaming. Because being able to keep track of adjusting the flow, holding the pitcher, making sure you stop your shot, making sure you stop your steam, those are going to be tricky things to juggle. Now, what I would say is, generally speaking, if you're making a single drink like I was, and you're in a smaller pitcher, let's say you're using like anywhere from 4 to 6 ounces of milk, you're going to be done frothing before you finish with steaming.
There we go. I'm actually going to demonstrate some of the flow control.
Sure.
Here we go.
Get you a little bit of milk. How much are you looking for here? 4 ounces?
Oh yeah, give me 4 ounces. I'll take whatever you give me.
Oh, that cup's a little bigger. Maybe I'll give you like 4 or 5, maybe 5, 6.
Now this is how I like to use the flow control. I like to start at about a quarter turn open. So here we go. I'm right here. That's about a quarter turn. And then I'll do that for about 5 seconds. I suppose I do need a cup under there.
Yeah.
In fact, how about that Acumini
Get you that Acumini.
scale?
That is one thing, Aria versus Sole. You do have a little bit of reduced workspace on the Aria, just because of that slim, compact design. That's where something like that Acumini is just so valuable for helping keep your workspace clean. And you're doing a little bit of a pre-infuse there, I can see.
You bet. Yeah, I did 5 seconds of pre-infusion.
Yeah.
Now, Nick, you're right. You can brew and steam at the same time. I'm going to go ahead and do it here. Let's go. Whoops. There we go.
And so, John, when you guys were slinging shots as a barista in your past life, what was your typical workflow? Were you brewing and steaming simultaneously?
You bet. Yeah, I was watching my scale to make sure I wasn't going too far over. And I was also dosing out my milk first. So that way, as soon as I'm ready to pull my shot, I'm also ready to steam my milk.
Perfect.
Now, Now, Nick, I think your milk consistency might have come out a little better than mine this time, but there's one way to find out, man.
No, I mean, yes, we're about to see, but this is kind of like a little tree or a bush or something. Not too keen. Oh, you're taking mine. You got
I'm
your
taking
own towel,
yours.
You're taking 2 towels now.
Well, yeah, but I mean, this one I was, wiping out pucks with. Come on.
All right.
Thanks, Nick.
Oh,
We've been working together all day. Now we're just getting goofy. All right, let's see what we got.
Okay.
Okay.
There's no hiding.
I'm a little bit fluffy on my milk. I'm sure it's gonna taste great. Let's see if I can get any good latte art with this, though.
And then we'll have just enough time to go over the Bezzera Matrix.
Yeah, and actually, I'm very excited to show
cool
those.
machine there.
Excited to show those panels there. I think that machine looks so cool. Yeah, I'm a little airy. That's all right. Let me see what else I can do on here. One. Can I get a second one? Barely. All right.
Very nice.
Got a little something, man.
You definitely use the right amount of milk too. I underfilled for sure.
I think if I didn't go so fluffy, I could have gotten something else cool here. I'm still a happy camper. If I served that to a customer, I'd be pretty proud anyway. So
I feel like they'd like it.
I hope so.
So
All right.
we'll move on now. Do we have any other questions? Otherwise, we're going on to the Bezzera Duo, Bezzera Matrix, right? And I'm getting my wires crossed a little bit because Bezzera at their top end for their dual boilers, they have their Duo and Matrix espresso machines. So to be clear though, the distinction between Duo and Matrix is just the housing. So the Matrix has these acrylic side panels that scatter color and light, and basically if it's turned off, it's a clear white panel, and then they take on the color that you choose in the settings menu. The Matrix has panels. The Duo has a polished steel housing. We also have it available in white, black, and red. And then right on the very back of the machine is a illuminated Bezzera logo like lamp that's right in the back there. So Duo, much more conventional, right?
Oh yeah.
But otherwise the same. Now, between those two machines then, there are 2 variations. There's a MN, which means E61, and DE, which uses the Bezzera BZ group instead. So E61, right, is exactly what we just talked about. It's a conventional manual group where you're using the Brew lever, and that's how you're actuating it, and you can install flow control. Bezzera's DE versions of these machines, those have auto volumetric programmability, meaning that you have buttons, and so this is actually the machine that we have in the kitchen right now.
Oh yeah, I've been having a blast with it.
Is a Bezzera, and that has programmable buttons that you can set to dispense volumetrically, and then they will cut after a set amount of time. So better probably for an office maybe like ours where you're making lots of different sizes of drinks, right? But just wanted to clear that up. This is the MN model, and if you're looking to get flow control, MN is the way to go. So we'll get back to the Matrix though.
Now, what I love about this machine is the digital display.
Yeah,
instead
well,
of
let's
just a gauge.
take us to our other shot of the display. John's waxing romantic about the display, so we need to show
I
it
just
off
think
a
it's
little
so
bit better.
cool, man.
So it's a very cool display, very rugged. Now, first of all, you can see there's a good amount of information that we have displayed on here. So in the bottom left, so we're on European time right now, but we have the date and the time of day. We did not, if you don't have daylight savings where you're from, we do. So we have not turned the clock back on this machine. We have our boiler temperature for coffee. That's going to be on the left. That's 201. And we have our steam temperature that's on the right. That's 266. So by tapping that temperature, we can actually go in and we can start making adjustments for this boiler. Now, we have a few options. We can turn the boiler on or off, right? You can have a priority set. So priority means which of these boilers does the machine choose to heat first. If you do coffee, it will heat the brew boiler first. If you have it set to service, it will heat your steam boiler first. If you have it set to none, the machine alternates heating between both boilers. So if you're in a rush in the morning and you always drink espresso, for example, you may want to leave it as coffee first. We can change the temperature. So this is adjusting, you can see, in 2-degree increments because that's being set from Celsius to Fahrenheit. Chrono, that's whether or not you want a timer. So you can turn your shot timer off. So like, if coffee stresses you out a little bit too much, you can say, okay, I'm just gonna eyeball it. Wetting, that is pre-infusion, okay? So on this machine, if we lift the lever here, so we're gonna say 3 seconds, we're gonna say okay. You'll notice nothing is happening because what is expected is what John was talking about earlier. That's expecting that you'll have the machine plumbed into a water line, and by setting that time, it's a duration to basically say, we're gonna lift this lever, don't run the pump, and let the line pressure pre-infuse the coffee. So that's what wetting means. So we have Alejandro is asking, my Aria manual says for the first time I turn it on and after more than 7 days of inactivity, I have to do a hydraulic circuit rinsing cycle that includes leaving the machine on for 12 hours. Why is that necessary? So that's something I think that Bezzera just puts in their user manual as sort of a, from the manufacturer recommended best practice. I think for them, it's that it helps to guarantee that you've completely run water through every single part of the machine before you start using it, really. It is not something that you have to do. So if you have skipped that step, I would not be too concerned about it. But
yeah, and every 7 days, I would echo what Nick just said as well. I think it's good to do. I wouldn't be too concerned though.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So if we want to come back though, back to our other view actually, well. So cool thing about these machines, you can also have them show you the water level in the tank if you're using tank mode. So inside the settings menu, you can choose whether or not you want water level detection turned on, and then the machine will actually tell you how much water is still in the reservoir if you want to change it. Now, going to our steam menu, we can simply change the temperature, and you can also choose to turn the boiler on or off, and you can change the priority as well. Up in the top left, where we have our Bezzera logo, that's where you can lock the screen if you want to wipe it down so that you don't have anything happen to it when you're wiping it with a towel. So it just blocks the screen for 10 seconds. And we can also do other things like, for instance, go into the settings menu, change the language. You can change from Celsius to Fahrenheit. So I'll go to Celsius. You can choose whether or not you want these lights to be very bright or very dim. All right, that's called luminance. And so this is in our LED body RGB. This is where, and Will, I'll have you zoom out for a second, we can start changing the color.
Yeah, this is what I was waiting for.
In different combinations to show off all the different ways that the machine can look. So I think this green looks pretty cool. We'll leave it with green. Leave the luminance high. I've seen some pictures submitted by customers of their espresso bar with a matrix on it. It looks really cool. You can also choose to turn other lights on and off on the machine. Sensor calibration, that's going to be for your water level, for detection there. Water source, water filter as well. So water filter, you can have it tell you the number of days that have elapsed, so it can remind you to replace a water filter. Water source is between tank and plumbed. The date and time is important because you can also program an automatic on-off cycle for this machine. So you can say, you know, what day it is and what time. So yes, we will end daylight savings. So we've gone back an hour now. Now it's 6:51. Auto on-off is what you would expect. So you set per day of the week. So this is Sunday through Saturday, the time of day that you want the machine to turn on, and the time of the day that you want the machine to turn off. Now you can use synchronize, which will give you the same time of day for every day, and you can adjust. So we've had people call in. Obviously this is something that comes up, but when you're using the auto on-off time, you do not shut the machine off. You leave the power switch in the on position, and then as the machine has it meet the time that you've programmed, it will turn off on its own. So the display will indicate that the machine is no longer powered on in that sense. This screen here will change, and it will show you basically a loading screen instead. And so that's pretty much it when it comes to the Matrix and Duo. It's a really featureful espresso machine, albeit one that has kind of a more almost extreme style, I would say, just in terms of its presentation. So, you know, the Duo is a little more traditional. The Matrix obviously is a lot more wild. So got Marshall Goldberg. The water level indicator does not tell you how much water is in the reservoir. It tells you how much is in the boiler tank. It's not especially useful. And then Edward Gianni, you might want to mention that one of the free accessories currently offered is the Press Sensor Bluetooth E61 group sensor. So Edward, yeah, I mean, I was just going off of the list that they got me there, but yeah, I can double check, but yeah, I'd say if that is available, the Press Sensor is an incredible option for being able to detect the pressure during your extraction much better than you could get from, say, like a traditional gauge, like you'd see on one of these E61 machines. Now that press sensor, you would just unscrew this gauge right here, and you can screw the press sensor right in there, and then you can view in real time on an axis, a time and temperature axis, exactly what's happening with your pressure. And when you get really good at it, you can figure out how to use the flow control to also make the pressure make some changes as well. It takes a little bit of practice, but it can be done, and it's a ton of fun. It sort of gamifies using the flow control, and if nothing else, even if you don't have flow control installed, I think it's a really good tool to see with very, very high specificity over the length of time the entire picture of what's happening with your pressure. I think it's great. Yeah, so you know, I see your comment down there, Marshall. Very happy to hear that you're enjoying your Duo MN. I do think it is a fantastic machine. I want to get right back up there, show off brewing and steaming on this, and then we're going to be moving into our next segment at 5. But the Duo and the Matrix have obviously even better thermal stability than Bezzera's heat exchanger machines with that direct boiler temperature control and incredible steam performance as well. So, Will, I want to get back up here, though, too. So we're going to do one thing as well. We're going to go back into our settings. We're going to set to Celsius. And once you're in Celsius, you actually can make single degree temperature changes, right? So if you do want to be slightly more precise, you could switch over to Celsius. 93 is roughly going to be around 200. But John, I'd say it's time to froth.
Oh yeah, I think it's time. I have an idea. Why don't we, do we have a shot splitter? We do. Why don't you do an espresso? I'll do an espresso, and we'll each steam milk. We're gonna do one more throwdown before we end this one. Nick is using the BB005TM espresso grinder right now. This is a timer grinder, and the time is controlled with the big knob on the right side, and you can change the fineness or coarseness, the grind setting, with the small knob also on the right side at the top. And I do like this grinder because a lot of times these smaller knobs on a grinder will, if you just do a tiny little change, it'll make a huge change. You have to turn this one quite a bit to get the changes that you want, which means you can be really, really specific and get that exact grind setting that you were looking for. And then just beneath that, Nick also has the Bezzera knockbox. This is a drawer, so it can keep your countertop nice and clean. There we go, I got some milk for you. And a little bit of milk for me.
We're gonna eyeball it here. Might need a little more milk. These are big cups.
Yeah, bigger than I thought.
Yeah, Bezzera does make 3 different sizes of cups: espresso, cappuccino, and large cappuccino. This is the Bezzera tamp station as well. I'm a big fan of this thing too. Just a nice steel piece here with a slot for your backflush disc, and then that turns into a holder for your tamper.
Nice.
There you go, John.
Thank you, sir. Why don't you go ahead and steam first? I'll follow right behind you.
Oh, you're going to use this machine, or you're going to use one of the heat exchangers?
Oh, good point. We have so many machines. Let's do it. I won't steal your rag this time.
All right, looking good. Looking good.
Not bad?
We're not like in a race this time, but I feel like speed is important here.
Oh, you know.
Yeah, and so Marshall too mentioned the wood accents. The stock wood that comes on the Matrix and Duo, because they both come with stock wood components, that's going to be rosewood. And that we have available for pretty much any of our Bezzeras. Did not do much better that second time either.
Hey man, I had fun. Let's see.
Well, if you win, I feel like you'll have even more.
Yeah, that's true.
But there was a lot of power on that one. And honestly, I feel like with a smaller pitcher like this, I may have wanted to actually reduce the steam power on that. But that looks probably almost even better than that first one, John.
Man, I needed just a little bit more to really cut through, but...
For those of you watching, thank you so much for joining us. I'm Nick.
I'm John.
And we'll see you soon.
Cheers.